Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Kindly take your seats and we are going to start. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كلام الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم أما بعد. It's my great honor and pleasure to welcome you to this great side event on reshaping the paradigm of economic transformation, empowerment and inclusion of the poor in the post-COVID-19 era. This side event is organized by the Economic Empowerment Department of the Islamic Development Bank. And as you are aware, we are living in a very difficult time, very challenging time. According to the statistics of the International Labour Organization, about 114 million jobs have been lost globally in the year 2020 alone due to COVID-19. And the World Bank has estimated that by the end of this year, there is a likelihood of about 150 million people falling into extreme poverty. What a need for economic empowerment. My name is Muhammad Jamil Yusha and I'm going to be the master of ceremony for this event. In order to discuss this issue of economic empowerment, transformation, and be ready for the post-COVID-19 era, we have an array of speakers. And as you will agree with me, that the COVID-19 pandemic is not just a health problem, it is an economic problem. Therefore, we are honored to have a number of speakers here with us who are going to be our panelists, and they are going to explore this topic on reshaping economic transformation and see what sort of outcome we will come up with. It's my pleasure now to invite to the high table His Excellency Ilham Nurkalab, the First Deputy Minister, Economic Development and Poverty Reduction in the Republic of Uzbekistan. Welcome, Your Excellency. And it's also my pleasure to invite the Deputy Minister in the Ministry of Investment and Foreign Trade here in the Republic of Uzbekistan and the alternate governor for Uzbekistan on the IDB board, Mr. Barfez Shukrat. Please. Welcome. We are talking about economic empowerment, and there are people whose specialization is to empower people. This gives me the pleasure to invite the Director General of the Arab Bank for Economic Development in Africa, Badia, Dr. Sidi Ulta. There are a number of people who are engaged in this sector, whether from the private sector or from the public sector. And we are honored to have the CEO of National Companies Promotion for our program from Saudi Arabia, Mr. Badr Al-Badr. And one of the beauty of IDB is solidarity. We always remember our own. My pleasure to invite the alternate executive director of Africa at the World Bank Group and a former colleague of ours, Mr. Abdul Salam Bello Abubakar. Please come to the high table. And then the icing on the cake, the head of the Economic Empowerment Department, Dr. Nabil Ghalab, who is going to be the moderator for the session and who will take over from me right away. Dr. Nabil. And Mr. Muhammad Mahir Mannai, who is also going to be on the panel, please. So, Dr. Nabil, if you are ready, I think I will hand over the microphone to you. Yes, so there will be a video to be played and then we kick off directly into the discussion. Thank you very much.
What do you see when you look at your people? Poverty or potential? Reliance or resilience? Need or self-sufficiency? Burden or partnership? At the Islamic Development Bank Group, we see unlimited potential in everyone. Given the right tools, we believe every person can build a sustainable future for themselves and their families, no matter their circumstances. To help alleviate your citizens' reliance on financial aid, we have developed a new, more sustainable development model to foster change in our member countries. We call it economic empowerment. Economic empowerment gives marginalized communities opportunities to access profitable projects, intelligent partnerships to support business ideas, affordable supporting infrastructure and business facilities, appropriate Islamic funding and investment so ideas can scale and grow, training and support to ensure people believe in their own potential, access to relevant markets, consideration as worthy economic actors. Economic empowerment has already helped thousands in our member nations discover their full potential. In Palestine, the Deprived Families Economic Empowerment Programme has created more than 16,000 economic projects by challenging difficult economic and security conditions and 52,000 job opportunities, helping people overcome their challenging circumstances. Like Saeed, he's blind, but with the support from Deep, he's built his own shoemaking business and even has plans to expand.
يعني أنا طموحاتي الشخصية لذاتي لنفسي يعني من خلال هذا المشروع يعني بتأمل إنه يعني يتحسن وضعي الاقتصادي إني.
In Tunisia, we use the economic empowerment approach to establish Zaytuna Tamkeen, the first economic empowerment institution in North Africa. Zaytuna Tamkeen developed and implemented 7 value chains in 4 different sectors, identifying those with high potential for job creation and where there would be the most positive socio-economic impact. Milk for Good is the institution's first economic empowerment project, aiming to improve the livelihoods of small dairy farmers. This project alone has the potential to impact 125,000 farmers across the country. In Sudan, our investees have created development programs worth $189 million with the strong involvement of the banking industry, reaching 172,000 people each year. Karachi is the group leader of the Salah Cooperative, which grows medicinal tea and was financed by economic empowerment investors. The cooperative supports 125 families, delivering specialist training. Over the next 5 years, we will reposition the Islamic finance, mobilize resources from a global developers network, and build resilient market systems. We will rely on our solutions engineering and entrepreneurial design, procedures, and structuring and designing all these interventions. Economic empowerment aims to develop a conducive ecosystem for economic empowerment through knowledge generation and transfer of tools, policies, best practices, capacity building activities, and application of technology for developing the capacity of partner financial institutions. The goal is to develop ISDB as a global center of reference on economic empowerment solutions for poverty alleviation and employment creation. We will continue to help more people realize their dreams and ambitions using the Sustainable Development Goals as a framework to help our communities live in dignity and prosperity. Will you?
Thank you very much for your attention. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I wish you all a very pleasant morning, good afternoon, good evening for all of you, whether you are physically with us here in this beautiful city of Tashkent or you are joining us online. I join my voice to Dr. Jamil's voice, the moderator, and I wish you all, I welcome you all to this first Economic Empowerment Forum under the theme Reshaping the Paradigm of the Economic Transformation, Economic Inclusion, and Economic Empowerment of the Poor in the post-COVID era. I would like to welcome all of you, and hopefully this side event will be very insightful. Ladies and gentlemen, I will start by some opening remarks, and I'm usually an optimistic person. However, I will start with sharing with you the sad reality of our member countries. As you know, with the economies of OIC member countries, that is expected to contract by more than 2%. With high unemployment rates that is varying between 8 to 10% on average, with 13 countries representing almost 25% of our OIC member countries having their poverty rate exceeding 30%. Half of the extreme poverty in the world are coming, unfortunately, from our member countries, and the rising refugees and displacement due to the armed conflicts. This is a sad reality, and we need really, to work hard to tackle all these challenges. So this depiction can only lead to one single conclusion, as we should on urgent basis tackle the poverty problematic and the development issues by innovating, by using other models, and we have to review the conventional and orthodox models, especially to those used in the poverty alleviation field. There are a lot of efforts deployed by the governments, by the private sector, by the NGOs, philanthropists and MDBs to alleviate poverty and to support the vulnerable categories and the vulnerable enterprises in the world. But the issue is that COVID-19 has aggravated the situation and really has impacted all the economic agents in the world, especially the backbone of our member countries' economy, which are the micro, small and medium-sized enterprise, the MSMEs. So since the startup of this crisis, the MSMEs are now in the eye of the crisis, and they are not very well equipped to handle the challenges of this pandemic. So a lot of governments, MDBs and organizations implemented and designed packages to support the MSMEs and to support the vulnerable enterprise in general. So immediate answers and immediate response measures and diversified package are being, as I said, designed and implemented. And the ultimate objective was to sustain this backbone of our member countries' economies. So with this, let me and at least this opening remark with a kind of positive note. Yes, true, we have a sad reality in our member countries. However, now we feel that the member countries, with this COVID-19 are starting gradually to be more resilient, more agile, more adaptive, and they start, finding some solution to the harm, adverse impact of this pandemic. If there is one thing that we need to learn from this ongoing crisis, is that we need to be very forward-looking, and we need to think out of the box and innovate when it comes to find solutions and models and tools to tackle the poverty alleviation issues and to tackle the vulnerability issues. So with this, I set the stage for this discussion today. And now let me share with you quickly the different topics of our discussion in this panel. We will have four main themes or four main topics. The first one, we will talk about the economic and social impact of COVID-19 pandemic and how can this economic empowerment and impact investment help in addressing the ongoing challenges of the people in the bottom of the pyramid. And the second topic will be around some of the key COVID-19 responses by the governments, by the private sector, by the NGOs, by the philanthropists, and in mainly protecting the vulnerable business, as I said, and the vulnerable categories in general. And we will discuss also what kind of opportunities this ongoing crisis unveiled to the private sector and unveiled to the governments. Third, we will debate successful models and best practices in tackling current foreseen COVID-19 effects in a comprehensive manner. And finally, we will discuss future plans to address poverty-related challenges in CIS and in Uzbekistan in particular. With this said, let me please introduce our distinguished speakers today. We are very honored to have with us today His Excellency Ilhom Nurkolov, the first Deputy Minister of Economic Development and Poverty Reduction. Welcome, Your Excellency. Prior to this position, His Excellency used to be the deputy, then the first deputy chairman of the Central Bank of Uzbekistan, and after holding a good number of senior positions in the Central Bank itself, in the government of Uzbekistan and the private sector. Welcome, Your Excellency. We have also with us His Excellency Mr. Favayev Shukrat, the Deputy Minister of Investment and Foreign Trade of Uzbekistan. Prior to this position, Mr. Favayev worked in the banking supervision of the Central Bank and held a senior position in the Ministry of Cabinet and also in the Ministry of Finance. We have with us His Excellency Dr. Sidi Wildetta, the Director General of Arab Bank for Economic Development in Africa. All of you know it like Badia. Prior to this, Dr. Wildetta was the Minister of Economic Affairs and Development in Mauritania, and also was the advisor of the President and the Prime Minister in his country. And before that, he held several senior positions in MDBs. We are pleased also to have with us Mr. Badr al-Badr, the CEO of the National Companies Promotion Program, NCPP, under the Ministry of Investment of Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Mr. Badr al-Badr has an extensive experience in the private sector, and he worked in international investment banking and venture capital in Saudi Arabia, and also he has a long career in the central bank of his country. Welcome, Mr. Badr. We have also with us Mr. Abdul Salam Bello Abu Bakr, the alternate executive director of the African Group 2 and the World Bank Group Board of Directors. Welcome, Abdul Salam. And prior to this position, Mr. Abu Bakr served as senior project officer at the United Nations and held senior position at the World Bank and also at multilateral institutions in different places. Last but not least, we have with us my colleague Mohammed Meher Mannai. He is the head of the Economic Empowerment Funds and Institution at ISDB. Meher was the head of the Islamic Financial Programs at ICD before joining ISDB, and also he has an extensive experience in the MSMEs and financial institutions. So welcome. We have very powerful panel today. We have top-notch and high-level speakers. I welcome all of them. So now we are familiar with the discussion topics, and we are familiar with our speakers. Let me address my first question to Mr. Favayev, because probably he has to leave us to join the private sector forum. So Mr. Favayev, my first question to you. You know that there are, COVID-19 social impact highly raised the demand on the impact investment and economic empowerment interventions. So let me straightforward ask you, can you elaborate to what extent your ministry current approach has been successfully to grow and the business and trade directed mainly to the bottom of the pyramid? I mean by that the vulnerable enterprises and the poor people. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Nabil. First of all, let me welcome all participants to today's event and to annual meetings of the Islamic Development Bank in Tashkent in general. We're very pleased that you came and joined us here in Tashkent. As far as a question of what the ministry does to really support and help the poor, support to grow trade and business directed to the ones at the bottom of the social economic pyramid. We are part of the big government team, and the ministry by itself, of course, would be not able to deliver the objective of supporting poor and supporting their businesses, promoting their enterprises, and providing them with a sustainable source of income. In general, the government, and first of all our president, have paid a lot of attention to poverty alleviation, to job creation, and to promotion of micro and small businesses. In order to achieve this objective, the government was allocating sizable amounts of funding for commercial banks, which participate in a special program targeting and new businesses and micro businesses. And the slogan we use for this program is Harabr Oilet Adberkor, which means in English, every family, each family is an entrepreneur or a businessman. The idea of this program is to provide access to finance, to facilitate the connection between these beginning or starting enterprises, family level enterprises, with larger companies, incorporating them by this way into supply chain of larger enterprises, and provide them not only with the social support but the means of a source of income. This is one program, very successful, and it on one hand use funding from the government, on the other hand it use capacity and capability of banks to deliver financing and help enterprises, small enterprises and family enterprises to build their businesses in healthy and sustainable way. And let me assure you that this program is large scale. It covers the entire country, and it helps our population, especially the families living in the rural areas, to create jobs, to be self-employed, and to get access to a sustainable source of income by getting involved and engaged in their own businesses. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Favayev, for this insightful intervention. Let me make good use of the remaining time before you leave the panel, and let me ask you my second question. What are the key sectors related to impact investment and poverty alleviation that are currently being targeted by the government of Uzbekistan, and in particular by the Ministry of Investment and Foreign Trade? And if you can share with us your plans on the medium and long term, and if possible, if you may share with the audience what are the main challenges that Uzbekistan needs to overcome to effectively empower MSMEs in these sectors, as these MSMEs are the backbone of the local economy.
We have several directions of supporting investments by families, companies, enterprises, entrepreneurs, which have this social and impact aspect. First of all, this is agriculture. We help them to invest money in modern greenhouses, in establishing modern intensive orchards, in setting up some processing, in setting up small fishing farms, being involved in cattle breeding. So it's mainly agriculture because most of the poor people reside in the rural area. Second is businesses focused on ladies, on women, and we help them to start their businesses and their small enterprises in sewing, in garment production, in providing services, which is another important area, since in rural areas and in some regions, access to service actually is limited, not because they're expensive, just because they're absent. So we promote and train both ladies and young population to set up their small services like laundries, dry cleaning, or hair salons, and etc. Another part is, another direction is focused on young population, and 60% of our population is young. And for younger people, we set up across the country facilities for the startups, facilities for incubation of businesses, facilities for training them, to provide them some skills training, but also skills to develop businesses. So depending on your preferences, you can receive training in some particular narrow technical skill and receive employment, get employed with higher salary, or you can get some training in financial aspects of the businesses, in management aspects of the business, and start your own businesses. But this is all related to smaller micro investments, micro businesses. And of course, on larger scale, we first of all focus on infrastructure, on power generation, to provide population and businesses with reliable power and services, on healthcare, education, and it's pretty broad range of areas where we're interested in bringing investments, given the objective to diversify further our economic structure. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Favayev, for your valued response. What I get from your response is that with this youth population, with this young, population, there are a lot of opportunities in different sectors in Uzbekistan, and even for let's say for the mega projects and for the big projects, we can in the upstream and downstream break down these projects and offer opportunities and integrate the youth and vulnerable population in this ecosystem. Thank you very much. Let me move to His Excellency Mr. Ilham Nurkulov and ask him about what was the impact of COVID-19 on the economy of Uzbekistan, especially on the poor and vulnerable, and you are the first deputy minister for poverty alleviation and economic development. Thank you very much, Mr. Favayev. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you very much, Dr. Nabi. I think this is today's panel discussion we can consider as a continuation of the yesterday's discussion. There is a very good linkage between these two discussions. One of the key takeaways from the yesterday's discussion was, if we previously formulating our goals towards the SDG or towards the long-term strategy in the context of
I think you have to get closer to the mic.
Huh?
You have to get closer to the mic.
I have to be closer. Okay. So, if you link, if we previously, like formulating our goal, high and sustainable growth, but making it inclusive would lead us to SDG. Now we have to make it more specific in the context that high sustainable growth, make it inclusive, but which leads to resilient economic and social systems. So resilience has become very important, and that was one of the key takeaways of the yesterday's discussion. And you asked the question how pandemic impacted the vulnerable part of the population, the socially fragile part of the population. So it's like it was almost like everywhere. If you look at the structure of the economy, from one side, the service sector makes like 35 or more than 35% of the economy. So most of the people who were employed in this sector, were left without the job temporarily. That is the first thing. The second thing was that the agriculture sector. Agriculture sector was relatively less impacted because of its nature and specifics. Another thing, the lesson that we took from the pandemic is that, the shadow size of the economy. We have to be open and we have to say that, if we don't work towards decreasing or reducing the size of the shadow economy in the context of covering the people with the formal sector, it will be also, impacting our resilience, and which will bring to fragility during the, this kind of shocks. So, and another lesson that we took is from the pandemic is that investing on skills.
Capacity building.
That's we can call it capacity building, because we saw that better trained people, better trained workers are less prone to this kind of shocks. So they have less kind of opportunity to be flexible. And I mentioned, a resilient economic and social systems. They come together, and it was very important to understand the root causes of and the characteristics of the crisis. So we discussed yesterday that it wasn't like a standard crisis, like demand-side crisis. Even if you look in the economic context, it was both demand and supply side, but at the same time, it was a medical health. It was the crisis of the healthcare systems. It was a human crisis, and in this kind of situation, having a good, let's say that some buffers or cushions for in the banking system, in the fiscal system, that allowed us to quickly, on the fiscal side, establish a, have to say, anti-crisis fund, to finance the key measures very quickly in an operational way. And from the other side, the banks were also, able to provide some deferrals for loan payments and be flexible. So this in turn allowed to keep the economy, alive and ongoing, but at the same time allow the, business to be active and keep the jobs. And so this, on economic system, but on the social side, we, revealed lots of issues. Yeah, it was we mentioned yesterday that in the beginning of 2020, head of the state declared that, the power, officially, the poverty reduction will be the key measure on the agenda. But just a few months after that, the strong quarantine measures came in Uzbekistan as well, in a very short time. So, the social impact was there, but how to work, how to define the target group of the people. And so too many problems came on the table. And, the absence of the right methodology, infrastructure, the system of defining the people quickly. These things were they showed us as, in which direction we have to work and how we have to organize. Nevertheless, we were in a very short time, by the initiative of the head of the state, there was an approach, we call it Temir Daftar, iron book, if you translate word by word. So by local municipalities, or we call hakimiyats, and this iron book was, aimed at determining the people who suffered during the pandemic and support them in a targeted way. So we were able, quickly, determine to find the families who suffered and design the right policies to deliver appropriate social support to them. They were delivered several, one-time financial support, but the amount of the families in 2020 almost doubled, from 600,000 to 1,200,000. So it's nearly 15% of the families in Uzbekistan. And the budget expenditures also increased, in the same way. So these are the basic things. But what we did, I have to mention again, the role of the partnership, because the crisis was, that was a non-standard crisis again, and that was totally new, and absence of the knowledge, experience in this kind of situation, makes it more difficult, even more difficult, and bringing, coming up together with all international community, like partners, IFIs, World Bank, ISDB, IMF, Asian Development Bank, and other development agencies, UN development agencies, they all, we were like, how we worked in the pandemic period. We were like talking to each other almost every day, every day, learning from each other, exchanging the views, how to move forward on designing the macroeconomic policy, on coordinating how we should move forward with the social, policies, etc., etc. But at the same time, we continued with on the social policy side how to define the level of poverty in the country. That was important. What will be the, best methodology that will suit us? And it wasn't an easy question. And it took almost 1 year. Then when we come up with some specific approach, that we call it minimum consumption expenditures, basic consumption needs. It was developed with the support of World Bank and UNICEF and other international agencies. And what we did a preliminary estimation, and this integrating this criteria with a single social register will help us to, to digitalize the this system, to make it our social policy more systematic, in a more appropriate way, and it will also help us to design right policies, not only the people who are below the poverty line, but who are just above the poverty line, who can be potentially, prone to shocks and go into below the poverty line. So this is very important, and we were able to do this. And the first, I already told, the practical measures were like to revise the minimum pensions and minimum social benefit payments as well. Okay, so these are in brief, and just to use the time properly.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Mr. El-Khom, for your very rich and insightful intervention. Indeed, with 15% of Uzbek families in need, definitely we need a concerted action plan, and we need to tackle this from different angles, from the fiscal policies, from the line of financing, from encouraging the banks to go to really to serve the bottom of the pyramid and the vulnerable categories. You talked also about the importance of the partnerships, and we have with us today the president of the Badia, or the CEO of the Badia, Director General of the Badia, Dr. Sidi, and we can talk a lot about these partnerships, potential partnerships between Badia and the government of Uzbekistan, probably not in terms of financing, because Badia is focused on Africa, but in terms of know-how, models and programs that are conducting in Africa. So my next question will be addressed to Dr. Sidi. Dr. Sidi, how could you foresee the global impact of COVID-19 pandemic on the most affected business segments, especially the MSMEs, in the short and long-term perspective, and how should the MSDB and the multilateral institution in general respond to this adverse impact? The floor is yours. تفضل.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى الله على نبينا الكريم. Thank you very much, and allow me at the outset to congratulate IDB for the leading role it is playing in the empowerment of member countries and the empowerment of SMEs in all IDB member countries. As you know, the Arab Bank for Economic Development in Africa, BADEA, is a multilateral institution owned by 18 Arab countries and operating in 44 sub-Saharan African countries. As you know also, the pandemic has really impacted all the MDBs, but also impacted the recipient countries and their economic players. In this regard, all the MDBs have launched programs to tackle the crisis. In the same way, all the countries around the world launched stimulus packages. So to go back to your question related to the foreseeable future of the impact of COVID pandemic on micro, small and medium enterprises in Africa particularly, I would say that we can divide the impact in three categories. The immediate impact, which is mostly linked to the measure taken by the government to prevent the dissemination of the virus in the countries. And this measure impacted micro and small medium enterprises in many factors. So if we look at the lockdown, for instance, the lockdown has prevented micro and small and medium enterprises from doing business on daily basis as they used to do. So that really was a very strong and negative impact on the ability of these micro, small and medium enterprises to do business and of course to earn money. Of course, most of the government took decision and took measures to support micro and small medium enterprises to alleviate this negative impact on their ability to earn money and to continue to do business. But one should reveal the innovation spirit in some African countries, which led to those micro and small medium enterprises changing their own business model and taking into consideration the new reality and trying to take advantage even from the pandemic. And I can mention two examples which are really striking. One is an example of some restaurant in some African countries which they realize that they are no longer receiving customers. They just decided to deliver food to people in their house. So they just changed their business model to be able to cope with the crisis. The second example is also very important, is the example of people in the garment industry, small, medium enterprise working in the garment activities. They just changed their model and they start producing masks to be sold in their countries. So I think while the pandemic had a very bad and very strong negative impact on micro and small medium enterprise, it helped some of the innovative enterprises to change their business model and to cope with the new reality. In the short term, it's clear that most of the micro and small enterprises were not able to survive, and unfortunately, most of them were not able to survive, and the government were in a position to provide them with some kind of support, but definitely the support cannot go to everybody and to every small and medium enterprise. And I should recall that in sub-Saharan Africa, according to the recent data available, there are around 90 million micro and small and medium enterprises. And out of these 90 million, 86% are micro enterprises with less than 10 employees. So you can imagine the impact of the pandemic on these micro enterprises employing less than 10 employees. And particularly in some activities like for electrician, plumbers, and the small works, they were really deeply affected. But of course, all services, the cafe, restaurant, and even public transportation, the taxi, the buses, and so on. So what will be the impact in the medium and long term? I do believe that the impact in the medium and long term will be positive. Will be positive because it will help people to change their business model and also to be more resilient to future crises. And one example I can mention in this regard is the microfinance institutions. So we are working with the Arab Gulf Program for Development, Ag Fund, on digitalizing all their IBDA bank in 9 countries, and that can be replicated for all the microfinance institutions around Africa. And I do believe that the future is for digitalization. And the use of mobile banking, especially for microfinance, will be instrumental in the financial inclusion in sub-Saharan Africa. So this can be one of the positive impact for the pandemic in the medium and long term, because people now are all shifting to using mobile money and mobile banking, and that will really speed up the process of financial inclusion in sub-Saharan Africa, particularly in rural areas. One other impact is on education. For instance, we are working with Uru Forum, which is a network of 126 universities in Africa, to provide distance learning for university students. And that can also be replicated for secondary and even for basic education. So in the medium and long term, the pandemic will have very positive impact on the transformation of the way people do business and the way people also carry out their activities. Of course, the financial impact was very, very negative in the short term, and most of the micro and small and medium enterprises could not be able to survive the crisis. But I do believe also with the partnership between the government, public sector, enterprises, private sector, banks, and civil society, of course MDBs and Regional Development Bank, we could work together to come up with integrated solution which will help micro and small and medium enterprises to be more resilient in the future. And we are working on a coalition to support micro, small and medium enterprises in sub-Saharan Africa. And this coalition will have a holistic approach to the support to be provided to micro, small and medium enterprises in a way to avoid this work in silos which we witness currently, and particularly with regard to the support in terms of providing financing, but also providing capacity development, access to market, and also integration to the economic tissue in the beneficiary countries.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sidi. It's clear that the COVID-19 has a very adverse impact on the short term, but it will unveil a lot of opportunities on the medium and long term. I think digitizing the financial inclusion could be an excellent program that can be replicated here in Uzbekistan. Definitely the capacity building is something very important as well. So thank you very much for this insightful intervention. Let me move quickly to Mr. Badr al-Badr. Mr. Badr, in this post-COVID-19, can you elaborate what are the opportunities available for social impact investors? And you are leading very unique program in Saudi Arabia that will encourage the Saudi investors to come to go on board and to invest in other countries. So what are these opportunities that could be attractive to foreign investors like Saudi investors in the impact investment in particular?
Bismillah. First of all, I would like to thank you for inviting me to this important and esteemed panel. And also, I would like to congratulate the ISTB for putting up the issue of the social impact investing at the center of stage of the international debate and action planning, and for developing toolkits to aid countries in the development of the social impact programs. It is therefore especially pleasing to see Uzbekistan government as one of the first countries in the region to develop and promote a social impact program to help boost its economy and the life of its people. Of course, the government's actions in this area, particularly important given the impact of COVID-19, not only here but around the world. The unprecedented and similar impacts of COVID-19, both in economic and health systems across the world, has affected many critical sectors, and in particular the stratum at the bottom of the pyramid of the social economic and have been hit badly. Consequently, that the COVID-19 outbreak shed further light on the need focus on the bottom of the social economic pyramid and enhance its readiness and resilience to against the shocks, even taking into account the many physical regulatory measures put in place by so many countries, especially here in Uzbekistan, and stakeholders as well. At the same time, COVID-19 crisis has accelerated the shifts toward digitizations and healthcare, the need of the resilience and flexible supply. As we can see that during the COVID-19 that we rely a lot on online educations and even the healthcare and others, and makes the lives easier. So the shocks induced by the COVID pandemic thus demonstrate the need and the opportunities for transformations toward the comprehensive crisis support model supported by the social impact investors. In fact, as of today, more than $350 billion in impact assets are managed by the global community of impact investors, such as impact funds and the development finance organizations, family foundations, and others. I will continue to and will continue to grow by a rate of 8% every year, according also to the Global Impact Investing Network. More than 8% or more than 88% of impact investors reported that their investments met or exceeded their expectations. These social impact investments partners are able to deploy social impact investments opportunities covering vital sectors like healthcare, transportations, but also sectors affected the most by the slowdown of the COVID pandemic that are deeply relying on MSMEs. Just to name a few of the opportunities that can even think of after even the pandemic. It's for example, water sustainabilities, which is building a small water purification stations and community in developing countries using off-the-shelf products, plus the power productions, providing micro-electrical solutions for remote applications in developing world. In addition to that, also cloud factories. This is very important. We can see it rising nowadays. Building an online community of computer workers hired from underemployed community, training each of them to do one of the computer tasks related, i.e. The writing functions, in particular the program language and translating codes and etc. Plus there is also micro lending. It's very important. I can see there is an opportunity for micro lending, creating a platform for individuals and organizations to lend money directly to entrepreneurs who had otherwise not getting the funding, such as those in the developing world. And last but not least, the social crowdfunding. I believe there is a need also for social crowdfunding, building platforms specially dedicated for social entrepreneurs to find groups of funders similar to those micro lendings platforms, but not lending also lenders to promise take something in returns in the future for their donations, a bit of money for the social entrepreneurs project now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Badr, for this insightful intervention. Indeed, social crowdfunding could be a powerful solution to alleviate poverty and serve the vulnerable categories. Let me quickly move to Mr. Abdeslam Bello. Mr. Abdeslam, how has the current COVID-19 contributed to the inequality and unemployment trends, and which groups have been most adversely, in your opinion? And also, with your hat as on the board of World Bank, how governments can successfully overcome the adverse effects of this pandemic, especially on those at the lowest rank of the development ladder. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nabil. And first of all, I want also to thank you and the Islamic Development Bank for inviting me to be part of this.
Abdeslam, please get closer to the mic.
Yes, to be also part of this prestigious panel. Couple of points I want to raise here regarding your question. Definitely, when we talk about pandemic, we see also that pandemic and inequality, I would say, are not positively correlated. We have various studies that show that actually there is one study that spanned from 2003 to 2016, making assessment of various pandemics and showing that actually 5 years after the event of that pandemic, actually, we see a continuous increase of inequality 5 years after that pandemic. And these inequality are even more severe when they are connected to economic crisis. So I would say we are more or less in this kind of situation. Second, if you look at the poverty, and there is a very good report from UNCTAD that was released earlier this year that shows that actually in 2020, about 120 million people have been pushed to extreme poverty. 120 million people. So what does it mean actually beyond even those figures? People who are pushed into extreme poverty also, they're trying to adopt also, of course, coping strategies, coping mechanism, among others, the food intake or the management of productive assets, which in the long term affects also both the human capital but also the physical capital for the poorest. So those are the challenges we are facing and we need to address. Regarding the groups that have been affected, I can give you a couple of examples, sectorial examples. Let's take on the health sector. When the pandemic started, actually, and you look at the situation in the developing countries, for instance, in UK or even in the US, what did we notice? We noticed that actually those are the minorities, should it be the social, the ethnic, or the economic minorities, that have been the most severely affected. Not to forget, of course, the women. So this is one trend that came out very clearly. But if you take also at the global level, what you see on the health situation is there is also a north-south or a developed and developing country divide regarding access to health and to healthcare. For example, you take 95% of premature deaths related to tuberculosis are happening in the developing countries, not in the developed countries. So 5% only in the developed countries. So those are the kind of inequality also you come to see. Let's talk about digital. I'm glad that the panelists mentioned the digital earlier. But the digital divide, actually, when the pandemic started, we are all being sent back home to work remotely from home. And children have been sent back home to study also on distance. But who could afford to do so? Even in the developed countries. I mean, if you take also here, I want to quote research from the Pew Center, which is a US-based think tank. At the beginning of the pandemic, what did they notice is that there is also an urban-rural divide. In the US, for instance, in the research, it shows that 15% of people in the rural area say they don't use or access internet on the regular basis. This is a developed countries we're talking about. So imagine in the developing countries, and especially when the access or the digital penetration is very low. So this is also another area where you see also inequality. And then talking about jobs. Sorry, I will quote some reports again, but a report from the ILO, what shows...
Mr. Abdeslam, I keep asking you to get close to the mic because
okay.
The audience won't hear your very insightful intervention.
Okay, sorry for that. So, talking about jobs, ILO highlighted that about 255 million full-time jobs have been lost in 2020. So, and this also, when you look at the granularities, irrespective of the income, the geographic distribution, the first group that was affected are the women, once again. So this is also one of the effects we see that lead also to increasing the vulnerability across the spectrum, I will say. And talking about jobs, you link it again with the digital, because those who can afford to work from distance are those who in general have high income revenues, are better educated, etc., etc. So you see also this gap. And the bottom line on that also is to recover from job loss. So the longer time you put to come back to the market, the less competitive you become. And therefore, the more you need also to get more training, maybe to bounce back or to diversify your profile. So this also speaks to the various category of social profession, for instance, and who have been the people who lost first their jobs when the pandemic hit, and you see the shutdown. It's the manual people. It's not the intellectuals or those who are working in the office. I will say at the beginning, just to make a kind of caricature of it. So those are the elements you can see regarding the vulnerable group and the inequality, etc. So the second part of your question is about what is to be done and how to do that. So what we are proposing and promoting from the World Bank and the board of the World Bank, representing also countries, but also pushing also the institution in some direction. One is definitely the human development or the human capital. So health and education. It's important that, and we develop a package for the COVID response, we can come back to it later, but one is definitely to help the countries develop stronger health system. And by developing a stronger health system, we're not talking only about response to the COVID, but the entire health system to address other diseases that are affecting the countries. This is one. The second is on education. More effort on education, but also having a closer look to those who have dropped out. And once again, giving a more focus also to girls' education, the gender component of it. So this is one. Second, we talked about market, labor market. We need also to support this area because the labor market should also play the field, and we need to provide also enough support mechanism, especially for capacity building, to help also other profile diversification, but also necessary component for training going forward. The third point is about the digital, and I'm glad that it was mentioned very clearly. I will not develop on that, but on the digital also, it is critical to link the digital with the access to financing in order also to be able to lower the cost of access to financing on one hand, but also to be able to provide enough information to, I would say, to people. Okay. Last point. Last point is the social response and the social component, and to develop also enough mechanisms upstream to prevent future situation as such. For instance, developing social registries, for instance, or developing financing instrument that the poor or the less skilled people can access, and that can be leveraged when you have a pandemic as such that can hit. I will stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Abdul Salam. I think we all agree on the importance of the digital and digitization of the financial inclusion. I cannot agree more. Let me move to Maher Mannai. Maher, we know all that ISDB invested heavily in the poverty alleviation over the last 20 years. And tons of intervention and millions of direct and indirect jobs have been created. I would say the bank learned a lot from its previous experience and developed an innovative model that you call economic empowerment model. So please, if you can elaborate a bit on the innovative aspects of the economic empowerment model adopted by ISDB, and also if you can share with the audience if there are any programs developed by ISDB to respond to the adverse effects of COVID-19 and meant to serve the bottom of the pyramid.
Thank you very much.
In 3 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nabil, and I hope this is not part of the KPIs assessment kind of question. Yes, indeed. I mean, IDB, as you know, they have, long-standing experience when it comes, to poverty alleviation initiatives and, MSMEs, and over then 20 years. But 2 years back, IDB, they came up with a new, approach based on a big kind of assessment exercise. We wanted really, to assess our initiatives and to see what's, going right, wrong, because there is a cumulative kind of experience. We have bad experiences, we have good experiences, and it's time really, to assess all those kind of experiences and to come up with a solution to address the needs and to cope with the market in nowadays. So we came up with a new kind of solution called economic empowerment solution. This solution is a really shift from the financial inclusion, just providing finance to MSMEs is not enough based on our experience. So you need really to support them with, technical assistance, to support them, to open for them the market. Because, leaving them alone with a big sea of market, dealing with gurus and sharks in the market, really is not enough. So that's why we came up with this program where we have 3 main inputs. as economic empowerment, department. We provide them with the financing, but supported by the technical assistance. And we try to come up and pave the way for them to introduce them to the market. And this is a key, in the success in any intervention. But to do this, we need to partner with other multilateral institutions. And as a matter of fact, yesterday we had a successful brainstorming session with Badia to try to really synergize our initiatives. We saw in certain countries we have a lot of initiatives that they can complement each other and to give more kind of value to the target countries. But unfortunately, everybody is working on standalone basis, and we are not really trying to cooperate. But still, in the big names, we are cooperate, but on ground still, it lacks a lot of synergy and cooperation. So this, model is shifting even the mentality of the recipients, because in always we think that the poor people, they are just, aid recipients. We wanted to shift their mentality as well from aid recipient into active actor in the market, to contribute to the market, to contribute to the economy, because really this is their real position in the market. Just they need support, they need empowerment really to act as active kind of actor in the market. So when it comes, to the initiatives launched really, to address the COVID issues, as you know, ISDB, they allocated, and they structured a big umbrella program called strategic preparedness and response to COVID with almost 2.3 billion USD. Under this big umbrella, the economic empowerment came up with a solution called SERVE, to strengthening the economic resilience and of the vulnerable enterprises. But as you know, the MSMEs, they were the most impacted category within this COVID, because MSMEs, they are not like the big companies. They don't have enough cash and the treasury really to survive these successive kind of lockdowns. For sometimes in certain countries reached more than 6 months. So for that reason, the Economic Empowerment Department came up with this, along with ISFD. They came up with the SERVE initiatives as emergency kind of response to provide liquidity to MSMEs, but through financial institutions to make it very quick. Because if we will be addressing those issues alone from Jeddah, I don't think so in 2024, and we cannot reach all those MSMEs. So that's why we opted to go through financial institutions. They know the market better than us. They are there, they have all their channels. So we channeled this line of finance to make it very quick and to address these urgent needs for MSMEs. Also, all this money, almost 240 million, is not enough, to be honest with you. We need to play the leverage. That's why we came up with, we joined forces with ISFD, and we came up with the new solution with Spark and European partners to structure what we call a guarantee fund facility. This guarantee fund facility is really, to support, because now, as you know, banks, they don't have liquidity during, the COVID. Now we are talking after COVID. But at that time, banks, they don't have liquidity, and they don't want really, to go and talk about MSMEs. It's a huge risk for them. So we want...
1 minute, please. 1 minute, please. Let's move. Yes.
1 minute. Okay. Thank you very much. But you asked me, it's a big question, so I will try, really, to wrap up. So the idea really, to provide this, line of this guarantee facility to banks to motivate them to take the risk. It's up to 90%. We provided them with up to 90%, kind of guarantee to push them to finance MSMEs, because really we are thinking about post-COVID. Now COVID, I think it's almost over with, and the proof is this annual meeting. It's physical now, and this is a big proof that we started thinking about post-COVID. Thank you very much, Dr. Nabi.
Thank you very much, Brother Meher. Let me capitalize on your answer and ask Dr. Sidi Wadata about, the best practices of economic empowerment in Africa based on the Badia programs. And if you have any advice or possible replication of these best practices or programs undertaken by Badia in Africa in CIS member countries? Dr. Sidi, the floor is yours. And please, in a couple of minutes, because we run out of time. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. I will be very brief. I do believe that the most important thing is to have all the players working together, because providing financing is not enough. And we know that most of the banks receiving line of financing are very shy from on lending them to micro and small medium enterprises. So what is needed is really a coalition of all the players, including government, who have the responsibility of creating the conducive environment and making the regulation friendly to MSMEs. And also we need the civil society to play the role of supporting the micro and small medium enterprise, particularly for youth and women. And of course, we need capacity development and we need to support them to be able to provide bankable projects to be funded by the banking system. We need also a very good coordination between all the players, particularly at 3 levels. So MDBs level, regional bank level, and of course commercial banks and micro finance institutions. So we at Badia, we are trying to work with all MDBs who are involved in the development, the economic development in Africa, but also we are working with the regional economic communities, and particularly with the East African Development Bank, the West African Development Bank, the Central African Development Bank, and with EBID, which is the ECOWAS Development Bank, and I'm pleased to see that the Vice President is here. So we are working also with the East African Development Bank, with the Comesa Development Bank, and other regional banks. But at the national level, we are working with the National Development Bank, which are state-owned, but also with commercial bank and with the most active groups like EcoBank, Coris Bank, and others. And we are working with Ag Fund, who is the Arab Gulf Program for Development, because they are also working in the area of microfinance through their IBDA banks. And I know that IDB is also involved in that business. So what is important is that all the players work together to provide business for micro, small, and medium enterprises, in giving them the access to market, giving them the capacity development, coaching them, and providing them with all the support they may need, be it in the upstream or in the downstream.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sidi. It's clear that partnerships and synergies are key to really tackle the poverty alleviation challenges, whether in Africa or in CIS member countries or in Uzbekistan. Let me move quickly to His Excellency again, Mr. Al-Khof Nurkulov. As you know, ISDB, the government of Uzbekistan, and Saudi private sector are working on the launching of the first impact investment or economic empowerment fund in Uzbekistan with an initial size of 100 million. So my question to you is that what, in your views, the potential synergies, and we talk about the synergies here, that could be established between your ministry, the Ministry of Economic Development and Poverty Reduction, and this Economic Empowerment Fund, the first of its kind in the country?
Thank you. So I will try to link what the key messages the speakers they have already mentioned and the importance of this fund. So in the context of synergy, I have to say that starting from 2017, we started to launch. We launched a family entrepreneurship program. So it's a briefing on our experience, and we, suddenly realized that providing the finance itself is not enough. So you need, first of all, some skills, business skills, some professional skills, etc., etc. And we tried to, link these programs together with, these training programs under the Ministry of Labor. And later on, we came up with the idea that it's not the Ministry of Labor who has to have a kind of responsibility to make sure that all the districts and regions, they have to have these centers. So we have to open the market for private and NGOs. And that's very important because the finance itself is not enough. But here again, I have to note that we have spoken about the IT and digital. So it's very important, and we have to look at the experience of some countries, especially maybe the China can be a good example in the context of giving the access to market. For example, like it's a commercial trading. And even in small rural areas, people who are growing some horticultural products and some other agricultural products, they would be able to kind of make a contract in advance or to sell their product in advance. And it's very important for the people that the product they are producing or the agricultural product they are growing has a potential buyer or market. So this is also important. And going back to the training, so it's also, the next lesson that we learned, it's not only the capacity building, but there should be, we are now coming up with some idea and conclusion that, the training, after the training, there should be some mentorship. And what can be important role can be delegated for this new fund is that it's not only to bring the financial source to support the small and medium enterprise, but to bring the knowledge as well. That's very important, and we are again coming up with this lesson that it's very important, especially in the post-pandemic world. We are talking in different fragments now. We are talking about IT, we are talking about the green, but we can, as you use the right word, synergy. We can synergize them together.
Yes.
It's knowledge, how to use the efficient technologies. Especially in Uzbekistan during the last 3-4 years, we were able to launch several programs with the support of IFIs, such as like greenhouse. But it's very important, having a right knowledge there as well. And for example, right knowledge, what to seed, what to grow, and where to sell.
Excellent.
And this is also important. I think, the role of this fund, the new fund, will be very important. And what we can do it, how we can make it efficient, and how we can make it, more accessible and inclusive. In the context of not only deliver the finance, but also bring a very good international experience as for example, from African experience as well. So this is very important.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. The good news is that this fund, this Economic Empowerment Fund for Uzbekistan, will be backed by a kind of technical assistance facility. And this TA will cover the non-financial service, the capacity building, the business engineering, the smart partnerships, the access to market, the digitization services, all that will be backed by TA facility. And the good news is that this fund is not meant to finance only, but also to offer a kind of comprehensive financial, non-financial services to the end users and to the vulnerable categories. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Let me move again to Mr. Abdul Salam Bello Bubakar. Can you share some success stories and best practice from the current and previous programs conducted by the World Bank, especially in the Central Asia? And if we have examples or case studies for Uzbekistan, please do. Please, in less than 3 minutes, Akhi Abdul Salam.
Well, thank you. Let's try. In 3 minutes, what I can say first is what we are trying to do also to support the Uzbekistan countries in the region is part of what we call also the COVID response fast track program. And in this regard, we have a specific component from the IFC, which is a private sector component of the World Bank Group. And we're using at least 4 different windows for amount of about $8 billion globally, worldwide. So these 4 components, one is about what we call the real sector crisis response facility, that aimed at supporting the traditional businesses that have already in operation with us, either through loans or through equity. We have also a mechanism that already exists, but that is being leveraged. It is a global trade finance program that aims at covering the risk of financing from the financing institutions. Therefore, they can provide also loans, resources to companies such as even the SMEs or the MSMEs, but in particular those that are in the import and export sector. And earlier we talked about working capital. There is a mechanism that aims at supporting also working capital by providing loans to banks. Therefore, they can extend credit to companies to address the working capital issue. The last component we have is about, it's called the Global Trade Liquidity Program, is to offer also support to local banks so that they can continue to finance also companies in the emerging market. So this is, I will say, the framework we have. In the region, when the pandemic began in the first quarter from March to June, we deployed about $1.5 billion for the region to help address both the health sector, the health issue, but also to address also the private sector dimensions. So far in this component, I can mention something about Uzbekistan. Two things. First, on the health response, it's a $95 million financing we approved last year at the board to help Uzbekistan address both the national health system on one hand, but also extend the program to low-income family allowances and provide one-off unemployment benefits. So this is on the social framework. But on the private sector framework, one example I can give is lending to a specific bank, which is called the Dover Bank, to boost lending to MSMEs, but also to women MSMEs, women-owned SMEs, especially through the working capital window. And we aim at, if this process is successful, to be able also to leverage it, and especially knowing that in the country, from the statistics we have, 23% women-owned MSMEs represent 23% of all the businesses in Uzbekistan. And the financing gap is huge. It's about $2.7 billion.
Thank you very much, Abdul Salam, for your insightful comments. We ran out of time, and His Excellency the President joined us. Welcome, Your Excellency. So let me move to the Q&A session. I will take just two questions from the audience, and sorry for that. So please, if you have any question, present yourself and indicate to whom you would like to address your question. Dr. Abdul Hakim Al-Waad, تفضل. Is there any mic? We need a mic.
We know the crisis of the world is and access to finance. We always talk about financial inclusions and microfinance, and particularly development of our houses necessarily should be there. I will not direct this to a specific person or speaker related to you, but we need to see this problem to answer the question. We really want a practical solution. You see, until today we still talk about the thermals of economic power and upscale development microfinance, which is the scene, and His Excellency mentioned that financing concept is not enough to really access the scheme board and really to the economy and really to solve it. So we want to know what is actually from all these things that is really working as a real model that we can take at EFO and part of financial institutions that are implemented in rural areas that are really suffering. The biggest aspect of economic development that I wish to highlight more that the small farms which are producing the
Thank you, Dr. Abdul Hakim. Your Excellency, Mr. Al-Khom, can you address this question?
Thank you very much. And on the practical side, I have to note that we recently started a kind of new experience in Andijan region, where we, assign for each mahalla, this is the community, a leading entrepreneur. So on the practical side, so this leading entrepreneur he will come and he knows the market, he knows how to sell, and he knows how to produce. So what he can do is that to provide the households, with the appropriate like raw materials, or if it is agricultural products and like growing technologies, and in turn can buy it as like providing as a potential market. And on the another practical side, what I can say is that we are at the start of the new reform. It's an agricultural land reform, and the idea of this reform is to provide the land to households and small communities up to 1 hectare to long-term lease. So it's also very important that the people who get the land, they like two important things. First is the finance, the second again the knowledge. And what we are doing is in Tashkent region is as an experiment, we are going to create a consultation office in each district. So the people who get the land, so what they can do, they can have a kind of several choice, after the consultation, what can they, what they can grow, where they can sell, and what is the technology for growing, etc., etc. So this is most of the, this is more on practical side. And again, the fund that we are going, to launch and to set up can be very supportive in this direction as well. So because we can interlink it with the best international practice and make the project viable.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Let's move to the last question. The mic, please. In 30 seconds, please.
But there are so many complaints that is not reaching the targeted set of people. How can we ensure that such programs have reached the set targets, are being implemented, and are sustainable? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I am the moderator, so I have... all right, so Meher Mana, can you address this question, please?
Very quickly, I seize this opportunity to invite him to attend the launching ceremony of the Economic Empowerment of Uzbekistan at 4 to know more about a practical solution and even to address the question of Brother Hakim Al-Wa'ar. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We will move now to the launching ceremony launching ceremony of our economic empowerment toolkits. And let me first welcome His Excellency Dr. Mohammed Sulaiman Al-Jasir, President of ISDB Group, and thank him very much for accepting to organize this first economic empowerment forum under his auspices. And special welcome also to all honorable guests and also distinguished speakers. It's with great joy and high excitement that we have gathered you all today to launch our practical and hands-on industry toolkits aimed basically to help financial institutions to achieve a greater impact when they finance the most vulnerable populations in the bottom of the economic pyramid. Without further ado, it's with a great pleasure that I invite His Excellency, Dr. Mohammed Sulaiman Al-Jasser, President of ISDB Group, to deliver his official speech. Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ghallab. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, wa bihi nasta'een. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I am pleased to welcome you all to this important event that will introduce one of IDB's innovative approaches to tackling poverty in its member countries: economic empowerment. During this event, I seized this opportunity to launch the IDB's economic empowerment toolkits that will guide our member countries and partners in deploying and implementing the economic empowerment approach. Spearheaded by our newly created Economic Empowerment Department, the Economic Empowerment approach aims to transform aid recipients and impoverished individuals into empowered and productive members of society. This approach emphasizes the need for business engineering and design to ensure quality from the preliminary stages of establishing funds, institutions, projects, programs, and initiatives. Business engineering of opportunities for the poor entails access to finance and markets, capacity building programs, the supportive regulatory environment, and infrastructure. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the road to economic empowerment is a journey of continuous improvement. Therefore, the IDB, in collaboration with partners, launched the Solutions Engineering and Environment and Entrepreneurial Design, or short SEED for short, program to develop approaches, tools, manuals, and IT solutions. It aims to enhance the quality and effectiveness of the design and implementation of economic empowerment operations. One of SEED's activities is to develop economic empowerment toolkits as practice guides for financial institutions. They are knowledge products designed to serve as industry standards. Today, I am pleased to launch 3 toolkits. First, the Economic Empowerment Design Toolkit. Second, the Islamic Financial Product Implementation Toolkit. And third, the Monitoring and Evaluation Toolkit. The Economic Empowerment Design Toolkit provides guidance and practical tools to embark on this journey. It explains how a financial institution can implement the economic empowerment approach by analyzing local value chains with the highest potential. As part of its mandate to mainstream economic empowerment approach into its member countries, IDB has developed the Islamic Financial Product Implementation Toolkit. It is a step-by-step guide for financial institutions to structuring and implementing commonly used Islamic modes of financing. Lastly, the Monitoring and Evaluation Toolkit is a comprehensive guide for financial institutions to monitor their progress and self-evaluate their performance. In conclusion, let us join hands and develop the necessary ecosystems to build a better future for the disadvantaged. The Islamic Development Bank economic empowerment approach is one of these pioneering transformations contributing significantly to global challenges such as employment creation and poverty alleviation. The SEED toolkits we are launching today are a stepping stone for promoting this approach in IDB member countries. I invite you to benefit from these toolkits in your organizations and join us in our efforts to promote more economically inclusive societies. Thank you for your attention. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Radical transformation.
It seems we have to start practicing Russia.
Radical transformation. Rapid and radical transformation. And our member countries are facing unprecedented economic and financial challenges. Challenges that need more impactful development solutions. The Islamic Development Bank is responding with comprehensive and inclusive initiatives, including our economic empowerment approach. A unique development model. Economic empowerment is about engineering the relevant business opportunities, then providing the necessary financial and non-financial services to help those in need on their journey towards a better life. Alleviating reliance on financial aid while enabling sustainable futures. But to do this, the focus of the microfinance and banking sectors must shift beyond the promotion of just financial services. Instead, it should ensure the economic inclusion of clients into the mainstream economy. So, to institutionalize this approach across our member countries, the ISDB Economic Empowerment Department is developing an ecosystem of knowledge that includes tools, policies, best practices, manuals, capacity-building activities, and technology applications. The Economic Empowerment Department has developed 3 detailed toolkits to help achieve this. Each will support our partners in their transition from financial intermediation to economic empowerment. The Economic Empowerment Design Toolkit explains how financial institutions can analyze value chains with the highest potential in order to identify and pursue sustainable business opportunities. This toolkit also includes case studies detailing the different business models of the economic empowerment approach. The Islamic Finance Product Implementation Toolkit provides a comprehensive step-by-step guide to adopting, structuring, and implementing commonly used Islamic and Sharia compliance modes of financing, thereby contributing to the growth of the Islamic finance outstanding portfolio. It also provides practical examples and templates that can be adapted to various regulatory regimes or jurisdictions. Finally, the Monitoring and Evaluation Toolkit is a comprehensive guide to monitoring progress and self-evaluating performance. This toolkit helps enable financial institutions to measure and communicate their financial sustainability, social responsibility, and impact on poverty alleviation, therefore helping financial institutions to successfully raise funds from donors. We need a radical transformation in order to keep the promise we development goals. We believe that economic talents are vital because given the right tools, everyone knows the scheduled future contributes to the economy and assets. We will continue to help more people understand transitions to help facilitate dignity and prosperity. We
Thank you very much for your attention, and thank you very much, Your Excellency, for your powerful speech and your strong support to ISDB poverty alleviation efforts and initiatives. With these final words, I would like to reiterate my warm thanks to our distinguished speakers, to all the audience, to our honorable guests for their presence today. And with this, I would like to invite Your Excellency and the speakers to a group photo to memorize the moment.
عليك. If you can hold this. Okay. Okay. دكتور I will bring the